Hey guys, welcome back to World of Warships. Today we're doing something new, a tech tree showcase, where I'm going to get an E, an efficiency badge, which is the top 1% base XP, in every single one of these tech tree ships, starting with the gearing line. So Farragut here, tier 6. I think tier 6 and below destroyers typically play around the same. Each subsequent tier though, tier 7, tier 8, tier 9, tier 10, adds a lot to the playstyle. But the low tiers play very similarly. We're gunboats here. Farragut here is very special in that it has the best DPM guns out of all the tier 6 destroyers. This is a series that I've been wanting to do for a while, as we went over the American light cruisers, the Soviet DDs, their whole line got buffed. You guys seem to like those videos. So let's go back and look at some of the oldest lines in the game to start with. I'm not sure why this Mahan went AFK, I guess? I'm not sure, but look at this gun power. It's so good, the amount of damage you can do. I'm trying to pinpoint sections of the ship that aren't saturated yet, and we're getting over 2,000 damage per salvo. You really do, in Farragut, if you're going to be grinding this line, start at the low tiers, being aggressive with using your guns. I think as we get up into the higher tiers, you're going to see them transition more into hybrid ships, focused on guns and torpedoes. But we really do need to be making good use of our guns to get the most out of the American destroyers. They're really good DPM, even though their shell velocity is quite poor. But at low tiers here, there's not a lot of consequence to just using your guns freely, as we don't have a lot of radars to deal with, so your smokes are always going to be there to give you a safety net. When we get close enough, I guess our ASWs are pretty good against submarines. But not having to deal with radar is so amazing for these American DDs, as we can push up, play very aggressively, and still be able to stop and use our smoke screen to farm or get out of bad situations. Even into an up tier here, Z23, our DPM is still more than enough to take these engagements. Yes, we have a massive health advantage, but we've done that by playing a little safer. Taking advantage of these higher tier ships as they get a little lower on HP in the late game is really important as well. Now we should talk about the builds here. It wouldn't be exactly fair of me to go over these ships in a tech tree showcase as if someone was interested in grinding this line, and I go down here with a 21-point Commander Halsey. So let's talk about the build for a second here with the Farragut. Tier 6, I decided to limit myself to 10 points. By the time you're getting to Tier 6, Tier 7, you should probably be getting around 10 points on your commander. So obviously we have to start with rushing towards concealment. That's how we get our decent concealment here of 6.6 kilometers. And on our way to concealment, we're definitely taking Survivability Expert to give us even more HP, Last Stand, and Preventative Maintenance. Very, very basic starter build for almost all destroyers that I'm going to be running. If you're new to the game, you really should be saving your commander points, not just always spending a point as it's available. It's much more impactful to get some of these higher, more expensive skill points. Now this game, bit of a yoink there on the battleship, I'm not going to lie. 33,000 damage even can give you an E. It's all about base XP with these efficiency badges. So we get over 2,200 base XP there. Kills, cap contesting is so important here when getting an efficiency badge if you're grinding towards them. And these American destroyers are really, really powerful at cap contesting, especially at these lower tiers. We have good gun power, decent concealment. Our torpedoes, while shorter range, at least on Farragut here, are still quite potent, and we always have the smokes to bail us out. Still being aggressive. We don't know what is around this cap here. Only know that there's an enemy Farragut here. And yet I'm still shooting my guns. At higher tier, I probably wouldn't be doing that. I'd be worried about potential radars, long range, high shell velocity HE spammers that are going to do a ton of damage to me early. At lower tiers, though, you can be more aggressive and get used to using your guns at these lower tiers. It's a little more forgiving gameplay, and it's times like this that you really do need to learn how to lead these guns, as it is quite difficult to lead these guns at range. And I'm going to continue to talk about the build here with upgrades and your choice of researching modules or not. At least on the Farragut, I don't think it needs the extra range. I happen to have it here with 12.6 kilometers of range, but the standard range gets you well over 11 kilometers anyway. More than what gearing has at tier 10 even with the same shell velocity on these guns. So you probably don't need it. That's a way that you can optimize your grinding by not actually spending on that upgrade. We're not always going to do that, by the way, but I did want to mention it as something you can do. You don't have to buy every single upgrade for your ship, even though it is available. Just because of the shell velocity, I just don't think Farragut needs that extra range, although you can research it if you want to. Something else we need to talk about when it comes to these American destroyers, as we go up the line, you need to get used to dodging incoming fire, as the rudder shift, turning circle radius, and your acceleration is pretty good as well, all contribute to a very agile destroyer. Here we don't have the best firing angles on our main guns yet, but as we get to higher tier, you're going to notice very comfortable firing angles. Getting used to using your rudder as well as your propulsion, slowing down, turning in, turning out, dodging incoming salvos is very important here. We do not have a heal. A lot of newer lines are going to have heals. Newer lines are going to have other ways of mitigating damage, like they'll have better concealment, or perhaps they'll have improved saturation, something like that. We don't have that here. Very vanilla line, which is good to learn on. Notice I'm going to leave my smoke here. This is a very aggressive play, but one that we can make because our smoke is still behind us. We can always turn around and get back into our smoke, still up for another minute. But here I'm going to try and use my torpedoes. You got to get creative with them. As we get to higher tier, you don't have to do this so much, but Farragut torps are very, very good. They actually do solid damage at just over 11,000, almost 12,000 damage each, and at these tiers, that is more than enough for massive salvos. The problem is the range. You don't have the ability to stealth torp in open water. But who needs that when there's plenty of island cover on the majority of these maps? Getting creative like that, learning the timings, figuring out how to sneak up on battleships can result in some pretty nasty salvos with these torpedoes, and most people won't be expecting it because they see a Farragut and think, oh, that guy can't stealth torp, I don't have to worry. But no, you do still have to worry about Farragut torpedoes. Our smoke here is on cooldown. That is a big problem with the American destroyers. Smokes last for an incredibly long time, which is great, but what happens when you run out of targets to farm from that smoke screen? We can always use island cover. Notice I was able to shoot one salvo, and this Baron wasn't able to spot us. Next up, we're going to wait for him to shoot, and then when he can't shoot back at us because he's on reload, we can get some free damage in here. Sometimes it's better to stay in concealment to surprise people, but in this case, I decided to shoot. You can make use of these guns more often than you think, and I think that's a big deal when it comes to playing Gunboat DDs. There's plenty of opportunities, even without the perfect smoke screen with your teammates spotting for you to farm. There's plenty more opportunities than that. Trying again to get some sneaky torpedoes off, but this Baron seems to know, and he is going to slow down on us. But using these opportunities to find the torpedoes, maybe another reason I would suggest not getting that range upgrade on Farragut comes down to wanting to play a little bit closer. You should not be using all the gun range that you have on this destroyer. It plays much, much better at closer ranges. We see the Baron there is about to reverse, so I decide again to go for the YOLO. Here, I'm expecting, because he knew to stop earlier, that he's going to stop and go forward. I'm trying to predict enemy movements. In this case, it's so close, I should have just gone for the gray line, and I'm actually going to mess this up. 4 torps, not enough to finish him off, but I had my smoke screen to smoke away. So sometimes we can use islands to push up close to enemy ships, and then we can use our smoke to disengage very, very quickly. He still managed to turn around and catch up because I was trying to do some silliness in that smoke that I should not have done. We're on 5,000 HP here. This Gaeta is on 16,500. And spoilers, we're actually going to trade this out. That's how powerful the guns combined with using your maneuverability. Constantly checking my rudder here, always looking with free look, by the way, if you use your right mouse button, that will get you this more overview look at the game, while also keeping your aim locked on where you were last aiming. That's what I'm constantly doing in these destroyers. Notice the little free look there to the top right of my aiming reticle there. Always doing that to get a good eye of where enemy ships are, who's shooting at me, and then just trying to sight dodge them. Seriously, the rudder is that good that we can just dodge a lot of this incoming fire here. So we managed to trade it out. Not the best play by me. If I had taken out that Baron, probably would have been a little better game, but still, this ship is incredible. And as we get up the line, this is still a very, very good line. Just at higher tier, we're going to notice a little bit more power creep happening. But Farragut and all these lower tier American destroyers are absolutely excellent to start you off learning destroyer play. Onwards to Mahan, though. Up at tier 7 now, we have a few changes to talk about from the lower tiers now. At tier 7, we gain the ability to stealth torp. We get 9.2 kilometer torpedoes, which are really, really handy as we start to deal with some more radars at this tier, forcing us to play a little bit more passive. Although you're going to notice I still play very aggressive with this ship, as we have the highest DPM destroyer guns at our tier, and it's really not even that close. You nearly have your end game HE and AP DPM on this ship as far as the line goes, as this is the same DPM on these guns as we get all the way at tier 9 for the Fletcher. At least base. You know, the higher tier ones get other ways of buffing with the 6th upgrade slot. Not so here. Our concealment is still important to note as it gets worse from the tier 6 slightly. We have 6.7 kilometer detect now. But I think that makes sense as the gun power has improved dramatically, as has the ability to stealth torp. Leading these guns, still going to be a problem, but you need to learn it, as sometimes you will get that final hit for the first blood there. Very important in this game, as we managed to take out their destroyer on this flank, giving me a lot of free reign over this cap. Next up, now that we have stealth torps, the ability to launch torps while fully concealed in open water, we can start torping for very common choke points. In this case, that corner of the island there, very common for cruisers, battleships to poke their nose around and try and approach the cap from here. In this case, might be a little late, but if the Fiji smokes, perhaps they will reach. 9.2 is a very, very solid amount of torp range here. Even though they don't have the best speed or damage output, just having that utility is really nice. I pushed my luck a little too far here with not popping that smoke early and paid for it. We took a lot of damage there, so we're gonna have to be a little bit more careful, a little bit less aggressive, as we don't have that healing ability that some of the other destroyers and ships have in this game. Which is a bit of a problem, as this ship does not have the best detect, so the enemy remaining destroyer, the Shiratsuyu, can easily out-detect us. So we're gonna have to learn how to play around that. There's also a carrier in this game. There's some radar as well. There's a Belfast. Couple torp hits though into the smoke. You'll love to see it. Finally, getting that ability to torp is so nice. And as we're going to higher tier, that's the main changes we're going to see going up from Mahan to Benson to Farragut. Your torps just steadily get better. The launchers here are split in a little bit of an odd way. You get 3 launchers. One of them can face both sides of your ship, and then the other 2 are fixed to either side. For some reason, this Shiratsu is actually here and blind firing us in our smoke and not getting detected somehow. So we're going to try and reverse out to spot him. Although him shooting that time did get him detected, so we're going to need to try to take him out here. Still, our guns aren't quite turned all the way. As we get to higher tier, our turret traverse massively improves. For now, though, still not the best. He's going to angle to us. We're going to get back into our smoke screen very quickly. You can do that, by the way, as a small tactic. You shouldn't push back out of your smoke when you're about to get plane spotted, but you can reverse out of your smoke just a pixel to start that engagement and then quickly accelerate back into your smoke screen. It's a tactic I'm often using in these American DDs, much like we did with the Farragut. Make an aggressive play in front of our smoke and then quickly retreat back into our smoke because it lasts so long. We enable our AA to try and help on the planes just so long as they're within our air detection, and then we make sure we turn our AA off so we don't remain detected for as long. Dodging a lot of incoming fire here, we still have a very, very good rudder and turning circle radius, allowing us to take reduced damage. Getting used to that. All these things we're practicing at lower tiers still apply to Mahan. We've turned back in, getting more aggressive again, as my smoke screen is about to come up off cooldown. Since that's our lifeline, we can use that as timings to say I can play more aggressive or I have to play a little bit more passive. It's a really good rule of thumb that you can use. We get detected here. Now we know that the DD is around, although we go undetected pretty quickly. Meaning he's probably in this little sliver of the cap where the island is protecting us right now. Especially if he ends up leaving the cap, then we'll have a really good knowledge of his position. The enemy carrier, though, is a problem, though, when we're stuck in a spot like this. We're easy target for them, since we can't maneuver very quickly, stuck behind an island like this. We do have a smoke screen. That's going to be what keeps me alive here if the carrier decides to go after us. We've got a decent amount of damage here, but more importantly, look at our spotting damage. While we can farm from our smoke screen, that is often not the most effective way to play these American DDs. We want to be cap contesting. We want to be aggressively trying to gain this ground, this territory for our team. But spotting is so important. for your teammates to be able to support you on your cap. If you're just sitting in smoke screens the entire time, just barely dipping a toe into the cap and then smoking up right away, or like what I'm doing right now, sitting behind an island, not spotting, sometimes that's not the right way to do it. In this case, we do have enough spotting, so it's not too big a deal. We're even going to pop out with our smoke to try and take this carrier out before he gets to the island. Didn't need to, but something we can do is use these smokes to try and take out low health targets. And then the spotting goes away, right? We need to be getting that spotting for our team. We won't be able to do much damage relative to our teammates on a lot of these targets anyway. So learning when to smoke is really important. Maybe a waste there, although we can make better use of it now that the Somagi and Queen Elizabeth are pushing in. We want more than one smoke puff. I nearly made that mistake here. Don't do this, okay? Your smoke screen lasts for quite a while, and you're very predictable just sitting in one puff of smoke. A lot of torpedoes will be coming for that smoke screen. We don't have a hydro. While our maneuverability is good, it's still scary when we don't spread our smoke out enough and are maneuvering when there's potential torps on the way for us. And our DPM is fine, but our fire chance is quite low relative to a lot of the newer lines. So when farming out of these smokes, yeah, the DPM is good, but having only 5% base HE fire chance is pretty low when some other DDs, more modern lines, get 6, 7, 8, 9%. Even fully built, they can get over 10%. With less DPM, though, at these tiers. So a little bit of a trade-off there. We could be using the AP, but at longer ranges, I find it starts to shatter or just bouncing off deck armor straight up. We certainly could be shooting the AP, though. I'm trying for those fires, though, in this case. When we're looking at the builds, though, for the Mahan, we're going to continue on from our Farragut build. This time I gave myself the ability to slot 3 more points, getting myself Adrenaline Rush. Again, saving our points up for these more impactful skills. This is how I'd build out a 13, 14 point commander here at tier 7. Adrenaline Rush impacts both our torps as well as our main guns as we get lower on HP, which is why our DPM here looks a little bit better than it otherwise would normally. As for the upgrades here, this time I am actually going to be taking the range upgrade. In this case, it means that we get this 11.7 kilometers of range. I think that's necessary. We need a little bit more than stock, so I would personally go for it. Otherwise, it's prop mod, accuracy mod, and then steering gear repair, engine room repair, and then main armaments too. Pretty basic stuff, I think. Perhaps you'd think about going for torpedo speed on this one, but I still think our main priority with the Mahan going forward is going to be the gun build. So increasing our accuracy, improving our accuracy is very important to make sure we're winning those DPM trades. Just because we have more DPM than a lot of the other DDs at our tier doesn't mean we're going to win those engagements if we're constantly missing our salvos due to the poor shell velocity, or if we're just not getting a little bit better accuracy. The torps are so-so anyway, that percentage buff feels pretty minor relative to the consistency we have with these main guns, especially when we're improving their accuracy. Using the AP here into this Atago because our HE isn't enough to pen his belt armor or his deck armor at all. And cruisers have very small superstructures. It's very easy to HE farm battleship superstructures because they're gigantic, but when we can't hit a superstructure very easily, the AP suddenly becomes a very good option for us, for cruisers in particular. So I'm often going to be switching to that. Torps might hit this Atago, hopefully. They're a little bit slow though, and fortunately our teammates do manage to finish him off. Up to 73,000 damage and spotting damage, yes. Spotting is very important. Even in a game with carriers, we still are a key role for spotting for our team. Even though we're a good gunboat, you don't want to be playing this one constantly behind islands or only in your smokes, trying to just farm with the main guns. The DPM is great, especially if you get into these DD engagements. Notice I'm trying to stay very angled to this guy. Take reduced damage there. Had a lot of teammate help. We slow down in smoke, but then instantly accelerate because people will blind fire your last position in your smoke. So you don't want to be slowing down to a full stop there. We need to continue forward, even if it pushes us out of our smoke briefly, assuming that DD's been taken out and we go undetected anyway, just because we don't want to be eating that blind fire. We're going to get this cap, and we already have a very, very solid game for ourselves. Managing to win this one, was looking a little bit dicey there for a while, but destroyers are just that powerful at carrying out endgame situations. You dictate when the engagement starts, when it doesn't. You can contest areas of the map much easier. You can spot for your teammates. It's just so powerful. Mahan is a great example of this at tier 7. Doesn't have the best concealment at its tier. Speaking of when not to start engagements, by the way, I just got greedy. Concealment's not the best here, but having the ability to stealth torp makes it pretty comfortable, and the gun power here is absolutely incredible. There's that E for us, maybe a more deserved one compared to the Farragut to start with. They're getting up over 2.6k base. A lot of DD damage, a lot of cap contesting. That's what's key to base XP, and in general, winning games with these destroyers. So now we're at the Benson. At tier 8, we finally get access to the concealment upgrade slot, which is the big boost here for Benson, allowing us to have 5.8 kilometer detect. We're much stealthier now than most of the gunboats we're going to be fighting. We still have decent DPM, but you're going to notice your ability to cap contest is a lot easier now thanks to your concealment. It's a little bit less about going in and perhaps being out detected with your Farragut and Mahan, lower tier DDs in this line, but using your overwhelming firepower to just bully everyone out of the cap. We can't do that as much here with Benson. Although our gun power is still quite good, it is the same though as we get on the Mahan. Plenty of ships have more DPM than us. Things like Cossack, Split, Oland, Akazuki, Fenyang. There's DDs that can easily compete with us or do better than us in the DPM category. Gotta play a little bit smarter. Fortunately, our torps get a nice upgrade. They reload a little bit slower, but they have a lot more damage output. Same range, 9.2 kilometers of range, which is fine for this tier. Starts to get a little awkward now that we're facing a lot more radars, but the torps do very, very nice damage now that it's up over 16,000 alpha damage, up from 11. You should notice that anytime you're landing torpedoes, that the torps feel pretty good. They have a long reload though, and they're still quite slow. So personally, I still like to build Benson for guns. We still can farm very well out of our smokes. In this game, pretty rough flank to be on. Tier 10 matchmaker starts to be a problem. You run into a lot of radars, carriers, subs. It's difficult to play DD in top tier. If you're struggling, there's no shame in going down to tier 7, tier 6 to learn more about how your ship performs with maneuvering, dodging, when you can get away with firing, when to use your smokes to not take as much damage, that kind of thing. We smoked up here because our Iparango was spotting for us, and I wanted to get a little more damage in to help on this Richelieu. Torps are sent for the gap because I figured the Richelieu would go down before our torps got there, and it's really nice to stall enemy pushes. Now we know destroyers are likely pushing this flank too, given how our teammates are getting shot at a bunch. We need to be contesting flanks with our destroyers too. I've mostly just gone for caps in these games so far, but DDs are so crucial for preventing enemy DDs from getting the flank and then just torping your entire team out. A Shimakaze on a flank like this is terrifying for your team's success, so we really need to deal with him. Dealing with this double up tier here, Shima's got decent guns against a Benson. Still lower DPM, but it's a lot of HP for us to burn through, so we need to be going after him aggressively when we have team help. A little bit less so when we're solo against him. We still should out DPM him though. But when we have so much team support, it's okay to play very aggressive. The other thing to consider is maybe we don't need to use all of our guns all the time. Maybe we should be turning in. Maybe we should be trying to just spot and have our teammates do a lot of the damage. It's not always going to be like that. In that case, we didn't need to. But a lot of the time I'm thinking about how can I make my ship the smallest profile possible. And with these American destroyers, we have such good maneuverability, we can dodge a lot of incoming fire, even when pushing towards people especially. We drift around incoming shells. I'll have some clips to show you of that throughout this video, but with Benson a little bit later on. Trying to torp a Vincent who's pushing into us, it's hard. I probably should have just launched the full spread. We don't want to be staggering our torps really. We want to be laying out the widest area possible. I'm not the best torp boat player though, so for me, I love building these ships still for gun power. When we're talking about the commander build, I'm adding another 3 points here for tier 8, allowing myself to get an extra 5% DPM again. If you're more of a torp boat player, you're better with torps than I am, as this Vincent is dodging us again. You definitely could go with the torpedo reload upgrade for 3 points as well. Those are interchangeable. It's whatever you would like. Now, submarine spots us for a brief second, and then, of course, dives underwater. Very difficult to deal with subs when you're a destroyer, who can't just dive underwater and magically go dark. We have to use a consumable to do that. Very expensive on a Benson on these American DDs, as you get 3 of them base, and they are a long cooldown, so you're stuck in one spot for quite a while. We just got a triple fire insta on this Vincent, by the way. You shouldn't do this, but I'm going to go for the clip. Can we get all 4 fires before he goes down? 6% fire chance with this build, by the way. Yes, that is all 4 fires almost instantly on a tier 10 battleship. And now we need to dodge this torpedo that could easily one-shot us. We need prop mod. You need prop mod on destroyers. But I couldn't believe that fire chance. It's a lot of RNG involved with getting those fires. Sometimes you're not going to get it, other times, well, that poor Vincent player would be very upset. I would be very upset if I was that Vincent player and I got that many fires on me at once. We find the sub again. He's just going to dive. So fortunately, though, we have our friendly sub around, and there's no enemy ships around to stop us from charging in. Most of the time when this happens, if you try and charge a sub, you're just going to get spotted very easily and destroyed so quickly before you can even use your ASWs or even get close enough to use these ASWs on submarines. It's still an important role for DDs to be able to go after them, but that's towards late game. That's when they don't have as much support, when they overcommit. That's the only time I find that I can actually safely, relatively safely go after them. If you're trying to do it early, mid-game even, when they have support, just don't. You really do need to play a little bit more passive than that and rely on your battleships or cruisers with the plane-based ASWs to deal some damage to them. Trying to launch some predictive torps into gaps. As you get better with the torpedoes, you're going to do better in the higher tier American DDs. This hybrid role really does start to fill out here with Benson. So you can definitely build Benson towards a torp build, but for me, I'm still taking aiming systems mod in the 3rd upgrade slot. Everything else, pretty standard, I would say, for your build. But you can swap between aiming systems and torpedo speed on your 3rd upgrade slot. Although even in a torp build, I would probably rather just get the main gun's consistency with the accuracy upgrade, because the torp speed is still going to be incredibly slow. You could go more torps on your commander for now, and then when we talk about Fletcher, we can look at the 6th upgrade slot, which has a massive buff for your guns or your torpedoes. But on Benson, I still think just running aiming systems is just better in the 3rd upgrade slot. That's just me personally. Nice little slow down and smoke up to farm the Utrecht, and then realize you were the one spotting him. Gotta include these mistakes, guys, because they're so common, myself included. Fortunately, he shoots, and then our Mogami, our Shikishima, both are going to be spotting him. But that's a really common mistake I see, and I do it myself. I just did it, right? You smoke up, and then you are the one spotting. So it's a waste of a smoke, limited consumable, as well as your teammates suddenly with much better gun power than you can't apply that damage in that target. Very important to not do that and realize when you're the one spotting that you probably shouldn't be smoking up. Unless you have to survive, like we did early game. Popping those smokes aggressively early game, which I didn't do previously, is now something I'm starting to do, because tier 8 into tier 10 matchmaker is quite difficult. We managed to pull this one back, an example where our team massively pushed the other side and just ran from my flank, but we made it work. Oftentimes, hybrid DDs with torps, they're really good, especially torp boats are really good when people are pushing into you. Unfortunately, I'm just bad at hitting torpedoes. Benson's still just an awesome gunboat, though, here in this game, which would have been the one that I showed you. This is probably my best game I've ever played in Benson here. Getting a little bit cheeky on the flank here, trying to avoid incoming fire. I talk about this when we're dealing with secondary brawling battleships, limiting who can shoot at you. It applies to everything. All these surface ships want to limit who shoots at you. Taking isolated 1v1s is really important. Notice here, Sharnors gets a little bit of hits into us, but not too much. We reverse behind the island. Finding these positions where you don't have to smoke instantly and still apply DPM, really, really solid. Sharn pushing in, and we can farm him here just a little bit. Perhaps I'm playing too much on the flank on this one, but you do want to be able to play flanks as well as caps. Depending on the map, it may be a bad idea to go for the caps early, especially if there's a lot of radar, or perhaps if there's a lot of subs or carriers around that can just happen to spot you when they're in the vicinity. it's very difficult. So in this case, I'm trying to play the flank on this role. Benson can do a lot of both. There's a lot of freedom in playing these American DDs just because you're able to use your guns, you're able to use your torpedoes, your concealment. You can play almost any destroyer role. You're not limited to any one specific role like gunboat or specifically flanking torping ships. You can do a lot of both. Deciding not to shoot here as I don't want to shoot well within Scharnhorst's secondary range. It's important to remember that as we get into higher tier, the secondaries start to get a little crazy and you don't want to be taking that free aura damage. You have a limited HP pool, and that's what really determines how aggressive we can play. We've made our flank work here now. We're getting in the back line. Torps are hitting. And do we open up on this Scharnhorst? Well, there's a Metz, and Scharn secondaries would still be just in range for us now. But I'm still going to open up because we're about to go behind an island. All that creativity we learned in the lower tiers is starting to pay off. When can we start to shoot and then go dark very quickly around islands? Can we shoot over islands? Can we shoot around island cover? Depending on the situation, the map, we can open up a lot of the time for free, essentially for free, without even using a smokescreen to remain undetected. Learning that at low tier, that's why I really encourage you guys to learn at low tier. Really push yourself to use your guns more than you think, as that will really, really pay off as you get into higher tier. We find the Kagero. He outspots us, but not by too much. That Benson concealment helping us out, and we managed to get our first kill. The burst from the Metz, though, yep. Okay, only one shell hit us, fortunately. Still a lot of damage, but we do manage to survive. And I pop my smoke here just to make sure I go dark and not take more damage from the Scharn in particular. Metz is going to be on a long reload at this point. So with Benson, you need to be learning all the torpedo hybrid playstyles now on top of the gunboats. But you should be relatively comfortable with these guns by now if you've been playing the lower tier ships, as that's what your primary role was. Now you get to start to see how it feels to have similar to the best detection at your tier, as well as some okay torpedo power. And I like it. I found Benson actually to be quite good. In fact, I found the lower tiers American DDs to be fairly solid and fun to play, good for their tier still. It's once we get up to the higher tiers that they're still solid ships, but I had a really difficult time moving forward from Benson here in actually getting the E. I know I probably could have just made do with some of the amazing games that I was having that was like a 1 or a 2 on the efficiency badges. But if we're gonna clickbait getting an E in every one of these, I better deliver, right? I better deliver on that. We get the submarine there. Look at how out of control this match got. We're gonna bring it back, guys. We're bringing it back, okay? I wanted to slow down and smoke here. I just had to hope that his Hydra was out. And now we just have to try and dodge his main guns. He's on a long reload. He's got the Hydra, so we have to rush him. I'm trying to make sure I get close enough to him that his turret traverse isn't going to be able to follow me with his main guns. Also remember his secondaries at close range, even cruiser secondaries, are pretty scary. So just barely avoiding him here, slipping past, and now we have to get these torps out as soon as we can. Although he's grounded, so trying to make sure we don't miss those. And then we nearly get finished off by the secondaries. We get the Metz. Continue to push, though. That Scharn 43 with his speed boost is probably chasing us. Oh, there's the Shinonome! Try and avoid fire. Look at how I turn in here. Look at how we're going to slip right past his guns. Look at that. He only hit us with one. Sometimes it is correct to just open up with all of your guns. But sometimes trying to avoid these slower firing ships, trying to avoid that fire and then opening up and getting all your DPM online can work out really, really well. And I found myself constantly doing that at closer ranges to out DPM enemy destroyers, just effectively taking their DPM to 0 because they just missed my ship because it's so maneuverable, helped me out a lot. Even at higher tier here, where we're starting to see these American DDs get a little bit power crept on their DPM, as that used to be their role back in the day. Now, unfortunately, the Scharnhorst did manage to dodge our salvo of torps. Not the second one, though. We get the Kraken, and now it's a 1v1. We brought it back, man. Benson is crazy. These ships are very good. Learning how to torp people is hard. I would suggest actually playing battleships, playing cruisers, playing destroyers. That way you learn how people think when they're in different situations like that. And maybe you can learn how to predict people. This one, though, we ended up with the 2, but still a Kraken. I still had to show you guys this one just because how crazy it was. Showcases that Benson still has incredible potential. We finally made it to the Fletcher. Tier 9 is amazing. Fletcher is absolutely awesome. Its matchmaker sucks these days, getting itself up tiered into super ship games. But now that you're here, you've made it to the tier 9, you finally have the torp power that's been promised. These torps are absolutely incredible and well worth building for, in my opinion. Whether you want to run gun build or torp build, this ship can do either one very comfortably. I'll still prefer guns personally, as I just love the consistency we get out of them, but these torpedoes hit so hard. I just have a very difficult time landing them consistently. They have massive alpha damage, up to 19,000 alpha damage, so 3 torps easily manages to take out that Napoli. They go 10.5 kilometers now, get a nice range buff. Still not quite outside of radars. We have some 12-kilometer radars to worry about, but still very comfortable range on these torpedoes and a good reload to start with at 106 seconds instead of the 122 seconds we get on Benson. And 66 knots, up from 55 on Benson. You should notice immediately, once you get to the Fletcher up from Benson, that the torps are so much more powerful. The guns are still awesome, and the E experience I had was much more consistently found when I went gun build, but the torpedoes here are awesome, and you should definitely try out building for either one of them. Fortunately for us, the build on the Commander can be reused for either one. It's really just changing your 6th upgrade slot that changes how the ship plays. Being a hybrid build, we can build this ship however we want to, and we can adapt to almost any situation we have in the game. Nice AP damage in there as well. Starting to use the AP more as I was playing these ships more. The AP is actually very, very solid too. But I really want to note how good either build is on the Fletcher. At lower tier, I wanted to push you more towards gun build just because the guns are so powerful. Best in class even at those lower tiers. But as we get up to higher tier, the gun power doesn't improve that much. Your comfort with using these guns should improve, and that should result in better gun power generally. Consistently hitting more, finding opportunities to open up more creatively. But now with torps, you got to learn to use them, as that is a massive portion of the firepower here. The ability for Fletcher to impact a game. It's hard, but learning to lead is really important. It gets easier as the torps get faster, obviously the range, but I still find it really is important to either go for choke points. That's a very common way to go with these torpedoes, or learning when battleships like to turn away, when they like to go in straight lines. A really good idea is actually looking at where their rear turret is pointing. If it's pointed to the opposite side of their ship, or they start to turn it to the other side of their ship, it's a pretty good indicator that they're about to maneuver. Or a lot of battleships will maneuver after making a salvo, right? Like after they shoot, they're probably going to maneuver, and then they're going to line up their shot again for a little bit and go in a straight line, perhaps. Things like that you can learn by playing that class. Battleships, cruisers, learn what they like to do. Cruisers like to smoke up and farm from their smoke. Torp those smokes. Fletcher torps are fast enough to get there before that smoke dissipates, and they have the range to get there too. It's really, really good. We're actually going to turn our AA off in smoke here because this Nakamov has shown he likes to blind drop. Learning these things at lower tiers where it's a little more forgiving helps you stay alive a little bit longer, eke out a little more survivability. Learning your propulsion, dodging, your speed juking alongside using your rudder, all of this contributes to a much more survivable Fletcher because you don't have the heals, you don't have the improved saturation mechanics like some of the French DDs have. You got to rely on your smokes, your concealment, and your ability to maneuver. As for your build here, as we're about to finish up this Nakamov, I think I ran a 21-point commander here. You'll have to forgive me. Getting an E in a Fletcher in up-tiered tier 10 super ship games was very hard, okay? I needed the full meal deal. I needed the full 21-pointer. So I'm showing you now what I would run as a final build here on this American line. Just because it's good at both, we're trying to buff as much as we can of our guns and our torpedoes alongside survivability. Those first 10 points I think are mandatory in the right side there up to concealment. Then we want AR, we want gun power, we want torp power, and even torpedo speed here. As we get to higher tier, the speed helps us to catch people off guard, even at 10.5 kilometers here with Fletcher. getting us a little bit more consistency in games where we're forced to play a little further back. And yes, somehow this game was an E. This was by no means my best Fletcher game, I thought, yet it was enough base XP to get us the E's. So let's move on to a few better examples. Charging in without knowing what's around the A cap. I think I told you guys that you probably shouldn't be doing that at high tier. Torping choke points here to start with, and then their Donskoy gets spotted. And what do they do when they get spotted, those radar ships? Yes, spotted radaring. But we're going to take 0 damage here, because we're going to slow down and turn away a little bit after we get radar spotted. It takes people a little while to line up their shot. So why would I start maneuvering while they're lining up their shot, right? Wait a few seconds. Okay, next salvo, we slow down and turn out really far. He misses it yet again. Another tactic you can do for radars that last a really long time is when they know you're running away, is just stop and reverse. Most people will be leading you, so then the shells will just sail over your head. And maybe that'll help you survive those last couple salvos while you're still in radar range. Unicum gets spotted, so of course we're instantly going to open up. We're very close to our teammates. This Unicum is very far from his teammates. It's hard to do, still have battle impact while playing safer, but notice how easily destroyers get taken out when they're playing too aggressively. It's a hard balance, okay? As you were playing lower tier, hopefully you were trying to push yourself to get out there and make riskier plays, because at higher tier, you really need to understand positioning. Fletcher is a great destroyer, but it'll still die very quickly like that Unicum did if it gets caught out. We haven't shown it so far, but American DDs are excellent at team play. Even if you're not running a div, if you see a radar destroyer or a radar cruiser playing on an island, a cruiser that's good DPM, playing open water, struggling a bit, you can just smoke them up and then go spot for them. I know this Los Andes is going to stay lit, that's why I reversed back into my smoke, but we're going to try and stay towards the edge of our smoke screen, so if this Los Andes, this Marlboro, gets undetected, I'm going to stop shooting and just pop out of my smoke so I can spot for my teammates who have way more DPM than me. And then when I know they're spotted, I'll just pop back in my smoke and pump some of my own DPM out there. We get a lot of spotting damage this way, we get a lot of utility, team play that way, and it results in some pretty incredible battle impact. Marlboro was undetected, so we're going to spot him for a bit. He shoots, so now we go back in our smoke and we can farm for a little bit. You see how this goes? We don't want to just sit passively in our smoke waiting for something to happen. We want to play around our smoke screens. I used it earlier in the lower tiers to try and play really aggressive in front of it, so I could just dip back into it if I played too aggressive. In these cases, I don't think that's as possible. Not sure why he's blind firing us, but hey, that keeps him lit. I'll take it. It's less aggressive plays. It's more trying to set your smoke in a good spot and then get some spotting for your team, as well as get some damage for yourself. Pomeran pushes in, trying to find middle of the map soft spots. A lot of people love to push towards the sides of maps. In this case, Okinawa is one of the worst maps in the game that has islands. I prefer Ocean to Okinawa personally, because BC is just way too weirdly open with the islands, and then everybody just pushes towards this northern side. So trying to play this soft spot between A, B is really powerful, as we can torp in that choke point. Fletcher's great under pressure too. If you find yourself close range against destroyers, you're very maneuverable, as well as have decent enough DPM that you can push people away. Here, we're going to be radared. I've pushed up very close to this island just in case I get radared. I can push towards it and get into cover. Unfortunately for me, what I don't realize is that there's 3 destroyers here, all very intent on taking me down. And that's a problem because our support is almost non-existent here. I'm including this as an example of, I just want to show you how insane it is that I survived this, by the way. But also, playing next to your teammates is very important, okay? If you're finding yourself dying early, it's probably because you're overcommitting. And I overcommitted here without team support. I thought it would be fine, but it definitely was not. Notice our AP full pens as well into the Farragut. As I played more, I used a little bit more AP, and it resulted in some good damage. For the most part, we still want to use HE into these DDs. He's blind firing us constantly, so we have to move. And we barely do survive it. And we catch him with the torp. We're living barely. It's time to disengage though, and Daring pops around the corner. and we turn. We can dodge a lot of this incoming fire just by our rudder shift being so good. Fletcher is absolutely amazing. I think this is a really, really powerful destroyer. I think I forgot to go over the upgrades, actually. Wait, before we finish up Fletcher, the upgrades I personally liked running was the Torps in the 6th upgrade slot, because that's your massive bonus over tier 8, alongside accuracy in 3rd upgrade slot. I want that consistency, the accuracy there, but the torpedo DPM is absolutely incredible here. It's really, really good. Notice I'm also not using the range upgrade here. We still get 11.8 kilometers of range, which is what the upgraded Mahan and Benson get around. So if you're used to that range, it's hard to lead at these 12 kilometer plus ranges anyway. You don't necessarily need to spend the XP there if you're optimizing your grind towards gearing. And speaking of, let's talk about the gearing, because I had a very difficult time getting the E for this ship. Getting that top 1% base XP was rather difficult on it. I had plenty of good games, but just couldn't quite get over that hill. Gearing is absolutely incredible though. It's just been power crept by destroyers with better DPM, better shell velocity, better survivability, better concealment. It's tough, okay? Gearing still has an excellent role to play in this game. If you've played Gearing recently, it still has incredible torpedoes. They reach out to 16.5 kilometers, and its guns are a very nice improvement over Fletcher. So if you're getting here from the tier 9, you're going to notice those two things immediately. Not only is your DPM much better on these main guns by quite a lot, but the turret layout is so much more favorable for a gearing, especially when you're pushing in. You can play very aggressively and mitigate so much damage because you have 2/3 of your firepower up front, available when you're directly bow into people. In this case, we are going to be very aggressively pushing enemy destroyers. Playing gearing is a lot about knowing who you are able to outgun and who you cannot, especially because of your shell velocity. This ship needs to take these gunfights against DDs at very close range. I really noticed that a lot while playing gearing, especially. At lower tiers, it wasn't such a big deal, especially because we out DPM pretty much everything at our tiers. Things like Farragut and Mahan, we've already talked about that. But gearing, it's just okay DPM. 216,000 HE DPM is fine for a tier 10. But with our shell velocity, there's DDs with 180, 190,000 HE DPM that I would prefer to play because it's much easier to hit targets, so our effective DPM is a little better. Meaning gearing still fits that hybrid role. So if that's what you're interested in, I think that's why you should be grinding towards the end of this line, at least if gearing is your endpoint. Because these have definitely been stuck as hybrid DDs for a while. When they came into the game, Fletcher, gearing, these high-tier American DDs were the gunboats, okay? They out-DPM'd everything because they only had to compete against the Shimmo line. But these days, things have changed. Fortunately, their torpedoes are quite solid, so this hybrid role is more than doable. It's a very good role to run. The torps, especially being 16.5 kilometers here on the upgraded ones, are absolutely incredible. You do lose a little bit of damage from the Fletcher torpedoes. As a trade-off, your reload also goes up by a little bit too. But that extra range allows us to torp from outside radar ranges, making it very comfortable in a wide variety of matchmaker. Gearing, though, is able to slot Fletcher torps too, and I did try that. I tried many different builds as I had plenty of time trying to get the E on this ship. There's actually so many games that the second channel may actually have an extras video where I show you just the sheer number of excellent games that didn't quite get there on the base XP. For the most part, though, I would recommend you run the 16.5 kilometer range torps on this one. If you want to run the full torp build with the 10.5 kilometer ones, probably just run that on your Fletcher. Maybe keep that as you're grinding through. Maintain gearing with its longer range torps, as I find it's so much better most of the time. The odd time where people are pushing into you, it's incredible. And in fact, I will show you an example of the sheer dominance that a torp build gearing with the Fletcher torps can have. But there's a lot that needs to go right. Not having radars, people pushing into you, no carriers. It's challenging. So just for consistency's sake, I would recommend you run the longer range ones, as that is a main selling point, I think, of gearing, is just having some of the longest range torps they'd still have good concealment and hit reasonably hard. It's one of the reasons you don't run 20s on Shima, is they're spotted from so far away, so people dodge them very easily. These gearing torps, though, have solid concealment, so they're easily able to hit targets even at longer ranges, even if they try to maneuver to dodge them. We're often torping choke points anyway, so having that extra concealment to help them out is very, very nice. Here, finally, found ourselves against the enemy carrier, and I'm going to show you just again. We want to be isolating fights with gearing. I play this ship very, very aggressively, as the turret angles don't support a lot of passive play. Anytime I found myself in a kiting position, I'll try to point them out later on. I found it just to be a little bit awkward in those gun engagements, where when I was bow in, it's very committed. It felt more comfortable, though, if I got in the right situation. If you're bow in and it's in the wrong situation, you're just going to die very quickly. Gearing has some decent HP. It's a nice upgrade over Fletcher, but it still doesn't have heals. Gearing is still very slow. Even though it's not as large as it once was when it came into the game, they updated the model a few years ago. It was like maybe a meter wider on both sides. It was a gigantic ship. So it's nice to not have to deal with that. It's still a reasonably small ship now, but it's still quite slow, even with this engine boost. So doing these speed juking things while we're kited away, it's not as good. The only way to really dodge, I find, is to be using our rudder when we're bow in, which fortunately gearing is more than capable of, because these two guns out front are just really, really nice. And while I'm pushing so aggressively in these games and doing a decent job of hitting the main guns over the sheer number of games I did get used to leading these guns, I can't believe I haven't mentioned this earlier though. You should really zoom out one scroll wheel tick on your mouse. When you zoom in with your shift key, just zoom out one tick, and that'll help you so much with leading these guns. It's difficult still, but actually being able to see your target on screen while you're trying to aim is incredibly important for this line. The shells are just that slow. I should have mentioned that towards the very beginning of this video, honestly, but now that I am, you can put it down in the comments below. Maybe someone already said it. If so, props to whoever did that, because that is the #1 best way to get better at leading the American Gunboat DD line guns. Actually, maybe it's not the Gunboat line. I'm trying to get this video out before the new line comes through, so hopefully I've managed to do that. This video's taken a while to put together. We get the E, though, on the gearing, nearly 3k base XP. I think a lot of that came from just collecting the buffs with Arms Race. Yes, took an Arms Race game to get me there. Onwards, though, playing very aggressive yet again, and look at our mini-map for just 1 second here. That is a 10.5 kilometer torp range. Yes, we are running those Fletcher torps in this one, and we're going to hit an absolute ton of them. Playing this aggressively, probably not recommended, but I'm trying to make plays work in this one. We find a Marceau, who's also going to be blind firing us, so I'm not going to blind back just yet. We're going to wait for him to get distracted, and then we're going to open up on him. He also wasn't hitting us too often, so I didn't want to give him any more clues to where I was. Shooting back and forth between these smokes, the whole dance, but there are definitely times where we don't want to be blind firing. Aiming specifically for the central portion of his ship under the funnels, because that is where French saturation doesn't apply nearly as quickly. That center point has the most HP. If we're hitting the bow or stern sections, that's where those French DDs have insane survivability. Not so if you're hitting that middle point. And speaking of middle points, gearing has a little bit of armor. A tiny bit of armor. It's got 21 millimeters of armor just in the midsection. And in most situations, that really doesn't matter at all. But there's a few tier 10 DDs that their HE can't pen that. Vampire 2, La Pampa, Daring, Holland, Smallland, they cannot pen 21. Gearing just can pen 21, so it will get through its own armor. But there's a few ships where their HE will shatter on that. Although it's such a small portion that they're probably getting full pens anyway. So going broadside, probably not the best tactic anyway. Hoping to clean up this submarine, and then we need to get to the other side of the map. And this is a big weakness of not just gearing, but this entire line. Once you've cleaned up your flank, it's going to take you a while to get to the other side of the map, man. It's like 4 or 5 minutes have passed since I jump cut there. Now we're going to deal with this Benham, hopefully, using our front guns here. Notice trying to turn in while he's shooting. Trying to position my ship so I can drift around those incoming shells. Benham does not have amazing gun power. But you can use this tactic against better gunboat DDs and avoid a lot of incoming fire. It's hard to hit a wiggling ship like that. And by not getting greedy for that rear turret full DPM, we save so much more HP than we're losing in DPM against the enemy ship. We can't obviously do that as much when we are kiting. When we're pushing in like that, it can work out pretty well. Of course, Montana also blind firing us. A lot of blind firing of DDs in this video. I'm surprised. I rarely ever go for the blind fires, but I guess in this one, the game is pretty much over, so it makes sense. Trying to get some fires or anything on this Montana, but I need you to pay attention to what I'm about to do here too. Because if the Montana goes dark, we really only have our torpedoes to deal with this guy at such a close range. So I'm going to try and go as wide as I can without grounding, because I want to get around his turrets. Monty has slow turret traverse, slow rudder, so he can't react particularly quickly. So I'm trying to get around the side of his ship here using our smoke screen. It's 2 kilometer assured detect. There it is. Now we're getting the torps off. Notice his front guns won't be able to hit us. Unfortunately, his back guns were on this side, and yeah, we take a massive hit. But don't worry, the torps more than enough to get us that dev strike. And then the torps have a very, very quick reload. A little bit faster even than they do on Fletcher. That is the main selling point, I guess. A little more damage because gearing does lose a tiny bit of torp alpha to Fletcher torps. But more importantly, the reload is quite a lot faster. The gearing standard torps have a 116 second reload, where the gearing with the Fletcher torps have a 103 second reload. So the DPM goes up by quite a bit. Faster reload, more damage. But I still would just recommend you run the longer range ones. It's very rare that we get a match like this one where there's so many close range engagements, especially YOLOing in and surviving multiple times with the gearing, a ship without a heal. Pretty lucky to be able to have that, but we should get this Lexington as well. I'm afraid of the secondaries finishing us off. It's so close. We managed to get them, and the Kraken. This probably would have been the E had we managed to actually win this one. Ruprecht shoots us with HE, and we live. We live on 53 HP. Although the torp tube permanently was destroyed. Doesn't matter much in this one. I didn't have that happen all that often in this ship, but it is worth mentioning that all the way through playing these DDs, as we get to higher tier, we rely more on torps as a hybrid DD. Having that permanent destruction of modules is so annoying, wargaming. It's so frustrating. It's one of those things that I just can't believe is an actual game mechanic. Much like carrier and sub interactions with surface ships. I just can't believe that's real gameplay in 2025. But ridiculous torp damage there. And moving right along, I have to show you why you should run the longer range torpedoes. It's purely because you can torp choke points and get so many just random torp hits. It is so incredible, while still running a gun build to open up and really pressure some of these cap zones. And as you probably guessed, I preferred the gunboat build on this ship, especially for consistently trying for the E achievement. The torps are very good and definitely worth building for, much like on Fletcher, but I just found the consistency of guns gave me better chances at getting E in this ship, because it did take me quite a while. In fact, it took me so long, I should have had a timer. Maybe for the next set, as we'll talk about towards the end of this video. I want to do this for more lines. I think it'd be kind of funny to have a timer on screen just to see just how long this would actually take me. But back to the build here. The commander, you've seen this one before. We're wanting to buff the torps and the guns, but after we get through building our ship out for concealment and survivability. Random torp managed to hit the main. The random choke point torps are so funny with gearing 16.5 kilometer torps. But on to the upgrade modules. I prefer the long range torps, so it is worth spending the XP for that. But having the stock torps isn't too bad either. But in the 6th upgrade slot, 3rd upgrade slot, those are the main ones that we're changing. I just went full guns personally. I found that to be much more consistent and much better for my playstyle. But the torp build is definitely worth running too, as there were plenty of games where I really couldn't run the guns at all. I was locked out by carriers, radars, and the torps let me actually impact the game from outside torp range. Those random torps again managing to find the DD, even though they weren't intended for them. Again, pushing in aggressively. The guns are pretty solid here with the gearing overall. The builds, though, you can go either way. Fletcher, gearing, either way, torps, guns. It's going to be a pretty decent experience. You just have to understand that your gimmick is that you're worse than a lot of the more modern ships in pretty much every way. At least, though, you are a bit of a jack of all trades, where most of those other ships are better at torps, but maybe not quite as good at guns, or much better at guns, but not quite as convenient on torps, or at least not as comfortable on torpedoes with the range in particular here on gearing. Montana pushing in and manages to avoid our torpedo, but smoking up and farming is still viable with this ship, assuming you have spotting. I'm not using all of my smokes that way. You've seen I'm often trying to hold on to them for risky situations I am purposely putting myself in for battle impact. But this is definitely a great use of your smokes all the way through. We've already seen that. I also think that in general, having these longer smokes is a lot harder to play with. That's why I find the daring line to be a little bit more recommended to beginners, even though gearing line is a very good one to go for too, to learn destroyer play. The fast cooldown, the fast bursty smokes help you in a lot of these aggressive situations to get away with trying to use your open up and use your guns more often, as I've mentioned throughout this video. With the gearing line, being stuck without your smoke for so long is certainly a downside. Now, as we get towards the end of this battle, look at how I'm able to position my ship and just rack up a ton of spotting damage. But not only that, we're outside of Stalingrad radar range and still managing to land torps on people. We have battle impact through our spotting and our torpedo threat while still staying outside of that 12-kilometer radar range. Very few ships can do this. Very few DDs are able to do that. And I think that's pretty important to note here with gearing and how special that is. It's comfortable. It allows you to play in a wide variety of games. Really, it's the carrier spotting that you can't play around so much. The radars you can absolutely play around as a gearing. It's really, really nice that way. 141,000 spotting in this one already as well. So a really excellent spotter, getting ourselves that combat scout achievement. Really nice to see that. Gearing was solid. Gearing was definitely a solid ship. It's just getting that E, I think, took me quite a while. Not necessarily the fault of the ship. I think it's just the way the matchmaker is. The ship is solid. It's just that there's so many blowouts these days that the chances of having a close enough match where I'm able to do enough is pretty low, especially on a ship like this one that needs to get close for its guns to work or needs long games to make its torps work that are still close. But playing gearing in 2025 is still quite solid. It's still definitely a line to go for. It's just really hard to play DD at top tier. That's where you got to learn as you're grinding through how to smoke up in the right spots, how to play around your smoke, when to push aggressively and use your guns, when to not. How do you play around radars? Staying out of their range or just in their range, and then pushing away from them. How are you getting battle impact at those lower tiers really trains you how to play at high tier, because everything is more potent at high tier. It's very, very difficult to survive for a long time in a radar or in a gunfight with a lot of support from both teams. You're going to die quickly. It's hard. But gearing is still solid. And that just leaves us to the super ship. Joshua Humphreys is the last remaining ship to cover here in the gearing tech tree line. And I thought about not covering Humphreys here in this video, as I think for most people, super ships aren't that interesting. Most importantly, for the average player, they're incredibly credit hungry to play or even just purchase in general. The gameplay is also very boring too. Passive games at tier 10 are even more passive at super ships tier. But I think we'll cover it anyway. As we're doing the entire line, let's try and get the E in Humphreys too. The ship does not gain much over gearing. In fact, it's an interesting look at what gearing line would be as a new release these days. At least I think so. The DPM is the exact same as gearing on both your guns and your torpedoes. You have the 16-kilometer torps. They're solid as ever, just as these guns are pretty good. The main upgrade, though, is going to be you get this 3-round burst with a very long reload that pumps your damage up by 50%. Your HE and AP salvos are 50% stronger for that 3-round burst. You pay with a pretty long reload, though, so you're going to notice I'm not using it all that often, as typically I want to retain my DPM. And the other thing I haven't mentioned yet is your shell velocity. I think that's the big thing with this entire gearing line and going over it, is learning the lead is very hard. Humphreys makes that so much easier. It's still not amazing shell velocity, all right? It's pretty similar to Harugumo or Cassard if you've played those ships. Not great at all, but much better than the Gearing. At 12 kilometers, Gearing has a flight time of 11.4 seconds with its HE. Humphreys at 12 kilometers is 9.6 seconds. So it's much easier to lead these guns. And with this 3-round burst, it's really nice for DD engagements. You can end them so much earlier than many other destroyers would. Timing the burst is hard though, okay? Very, very difficult here into the summers. We're forced to angle here as incomparables are very annoying to fight against, as I thought in my initial video on it. Yeah, what a horrible addition to the game. It's so difficult to play DDs as it is. And then to face a battleship with Des Moines DPM, better shell velocity, it's crazy. Absolutely insane. But look at the burst! That's also difficult to face. That Summers finished off very quickly, and it actually allows me to get in my smoke, because I was the only one spotting that Summers, and I get in my smoke so much sooner, because I finished them off quicker, and that saved me a lot of incoming damage from the Dalarna. Very important to not burst too soon. I have very often in my initial games with Humphreys back when it was released, done that, where I burst too soon, and then I have that 30-second reload to wait while the enemy DD either gets away or more likely finishes me off, because there's nothing I can do. I find it quite interesting that I found Humphreys quite comfortable. It's this shell velocity and more HP is really the major change over Gearing. And yet, so many other super ships get massive buffs, almost 2 or 3 tiers worth of buffs over their tier 10 counterpart. And yet I found this one to be pretty good at its tier. Maybe that's because all Gearing needs for its DPM to be more effective is that bump to shell velocity and more HP to survive those engagements. I don't know. I think Humphreys is a pretty solid super ship. It's a great example of not busted, overpowered, insane power creep, and yet still bringing something, a gimmick to the table for a super ship, maybe warranting getting it. Although, considering how insane some of the other super ships are, does that mean it's underpowered? I don't know. But when it comes to this line, Humphreys is the ultimate version of it. I still think stopping at Gearing is totally reasonable. These ships are just so expensive to run, so expensive to buy, and you're getting most of the playstyle. In fact, you're getting better games more than likely with Gearing because you're not always dealing with super ships. Although I guess blind firing irresistibles are also in tier 10 these days. But your torps are the same, so having this long-range torpedo power isn't new. In fact, it's the same thing that we're getting on the Gearing, and you get the choice to go shorter range on Gearing if you want to, where you don't get that option on Humphreys. Our concealment is a little bit worse here on Humphreys, not by a lot, but by a tiny amount. It's not going to make a huge difference, though, with the lag on the spotting mechanics in this game. But you may have noticed already that I've changed up my build here for the Humphreys. To get the E, I needed to change things up. I probably could have got it with the standard build that we have been running here, but I went full gun build, and I swapped out the torpedo upgrades on this ship for even more gun power. Fearless Brawler is what I went with, allowing me 10% extra DPM when I am spotted. I found that really, really useful for these destroyer engagements a lot of the time, and even just open water gunboating. I found it more comfortable to open water gunboat purely because we have better shell velocity here too. The range is decent at 12.1, Gearing pretty anemic 11.1 kilometers of range at tier 10. So I guess that's another upgrade that I hadn't considered. So that's nice, I guess, but running a different build is quite expensive, and that's why I've tried to keep things pretty consistent as we've gone through, because you should be thinking about your final build for your line when you're getting into your tier 6, 7, 8 ships, getting more points. It should be relatively consistent because it's so expensive, Commander XP, and if you don't have Elite Commander XP, doubloons? I don't think that's really expensive to be changing your builds all the time. So getting a more universal build still works very well on Humphreys. Just to get this E, I found myself needing a little bit more gun power. So I swapped that out for the gun build. And then I had 1 point left over, so then I put that in consumable reload. Because it is awkward playing these American DDs, and they're extremely slow reload on their smoke. If you don't put your smoke in a good spot, as we've already mentioned, it's a long cooldown time to wait to get this smoke screen back again. It's difficult. Humphreys with its burst, though, I gotta show you this. This Minotaur is pretty confident, and we swap to the burst fire. 8 citadels, 12, 13, 16, or 15 citadels. My mistake, not 16. Dev strike. A gun-powered dev strike out of a destroyer. How crazy is that? And now I'm gonna mess it up entirely for the Smolensk rounding the corner here. I don't have the burst on. Why didn't I have the burst, man? I swapped to it too late, but then he's angled, and we go down. He's gonna die. I mean, he's in front of a Wisconsin and a carrier, so they just wanted to YOLO around the corner for me, unfortunately. The random torpedoes claim another victim. Yes, the long-range torps are very nice for crossing caps, hitting DDs, but also having a dual-purpose effect there and hitting the Montana as well. Absolutely crazy power on these torpedoes. But you're getting that also on gearing, right? We find ourselves in a gunfight with a Holland who has very similar DPM to us. Isn't that interesting? Like, I don't think of Holland as like an insane gunboat, and yet it's the similar DPM. We're fully built, or mostly built for guns, and as we're about to go around this island, we burst. That's the other value of burst fires, is when you're going around islands, you're about to go dark, the enemy ship's about to go dark, burst fires are pretty good there. Speaking of the upgrade modules, we've seen this before, but I do have to mention it. 6th upgrade slot, 3rd upgrade slot, I'm just going guns. You can go torps, but I would still just recommend you save that for maybe gearing if you want the 16s, or Fletcher if you want the 10.5s for torp builds. This one I think is much better ran as a primary gunboat here. Considering our gimmick is that our guns have better shell velocity, we have this 3-round burst, and we have more HP to take those engagements. And your torps are often up anyway for situations like that. And then the 3-round burst manages to get the Georgia. Humphreys is a decent end to the line. It is not the most powerful super ship, though. So if you're looking for that, if that's why you're grinding the line, I really wouldn't recommend it. This is a line that you should be grinding for a decent hybrid DD experience. A jack of all trades. Something that you can run in a division and smoke up your friends and spot for them. That's what the gearing line really is best at. It's more than that, certainly, if that's all you've heard. In fact, I may have fallen into that trap myself as thinking of the gearing line as just a smoke bot line. It's certainly better than that. But with all the new lines that we've been adding recently, Wargaming, and the number of gimmicks and power creep, the gearing line just doesn't feel like it has much of a place. Humphreys, though, I mean, we got this burst, we got citadels on a Salem even. Another dev strike. Oh my goodness, I was getting very lucky with these close range engagements with this one. So, should you grind the gearing? Well, if anything looked interesting to you in this video, I think definitely. I was pleasantly surprised overall by these ships and how they performed here. I thought there would be much more power creep, and while they are nowhere near the gunboats they used to be, the hybrid role certainly is very powerful these days. Having good torps alongside respectable gunpower means you're a threat no matter what the situation brings. Unless it's carrier spotting and a bunch of radars, at least until you get to gearing range torpedoes where you can outrange the radars. It's not easy to play DDs at high tier, so learning how to play them at mid tiers is very important. I think this line does a decent job of showing you how to play gunboats at those lower tiers, so definitely don't rush through the tier 5, tier 6, tier 7 experience. Even tier 8, getting those down tiers to learn how to do close range torping just outside your concealment range, playing more aggressively like that while still having good gunpower is amazing. Now, this video took me a very, very long time to make. I was surprised how long it took me to get the E on this one, so I'm going to do something that I pretty much never do, okay? If you enjoyed it, I'd appreciate it if you drop me a like and subscribe to the channel. If you enjoyed it, if you got some value out of it, I would really appreciate that. Lets me know that this was a good video to go for, as it took me a lot more time and effort to make. And if it's popular, if it goes well, which I'm hoping it will, I would like to make more of these in the future. We can go over a bunch of different tech tree lines. I would prefer to start with the older ones, to be honest with you. So we've already gone through gearing. Des Moines line, perhaps, Monty line, and then, of course, the 3 Japanese lines, looking at Shima, maybe Zhao, or Yamato. I'm kind of leaning towards the Yamato line, seeing what that whole line is like. in 2025 here. Getting an E in every single one of these could be very interesting. But that's going to do it for today's massive video. I really hope you guys enjoyed it. If you made it this far, definitely let me know what you think about this line in the comments down below. Thanks again for watching, and have a great rest of your day.